What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. And before the 29th of December, I had never played Path of Exile before in my entire life. There's only one game I played, which was an ARPG, and that was Diablo 4. So in this video, I'm going to give you a complete new player's perspective on the game, a couple of thoughts, and then break down a few things that I think new players would like to know about the game as well. So stay tuned. So I wanted to start this video talking about my thoughts on Path of Exile from a new player's perspective. Like I said, I've never played the game before. I'm really not big into the ARPG genre, not out of choice because I don't like it. It's because I've just something I've never really come across before. I tend to play single player games and also multiplayer games like Counter-Strike, and I play Baldur's Gate, and I like to play story games, but I've just never really got into something like this until earlier this year when I started playing Diablo 4. It was a close friend of mine that recommended it, and he likes his ARPG games, so I thought I'd give it a try. Now, this video I want to be predominantly about Path of Exile. I don't really want to talk too much about Diablo 4, but of course people are going to make the comparisons, so I thought I'd do a quick one just to get the video off to a start. So if we begin with the visuals of both of the games, I think they both look great. Diablo 4 is a brand new game, so I suppose it may look a little tiny bit more refined. However, I mean, Path of Exile from a 10-year-old game, I mean, I think this game came out in 2013. It looks really, really good. I had absolutely no complaints with anything the way it looked, or any of the graphics, or smoothness, or whatever. It's really, really, really good-looking game. I love the environments. I love its aesthetic in general, and I like the design, which I can talk about a little more about the level design a little bit later on. But in general, it's such a good, well-made game. The mechanics are really good. They work really well. Nothing's really too jittery. When you've got your full build and it's kind of really fast-paced, it all works really well with itself. It's not overly difficult, I would say. In terms of you don't need to be mechanically gifted to play the game. You do really need to know what you're doing, which is a big point. But you don't need to be a professional gamer to be able to have a good time in this game. I think as long as you have a few things set up, which we could discuss, builds and hotkeys, then you're going to be okay. So what I mean is that people from all levels of sort of difficulty can play this game. The gameplay and the quests and the acts, this is just so well made in this game. And I will say that I found this Path of Exile game to be much better than Diablo in this aspect. So the actual gameplay of it, the way it plays through the maps, the mobs, there's really good mob variety. There's a lot of different monsters to play with. The mechanics of the monsters are really well diverse. I felt like Diablo's a bit of, well, not a bit, but really copy and paste when talking about bosses and monsters and mobs and the type of way you kill things. Super, super competitive. The level design on this game is far superior, in my opinion, to Diablo. They change all of the time. It's not something that's just exactly the same layout. The layouts are different. The areas are different. I mean, even when you go through the main storyline or the main quest line, even when you go back to places you've already been before, everything's different about them. The new sort of quests that you get are completely different. There's not many sort of just fetch this, fetch that quests. I found the questing actually really quite interesting, and I did like the lore of the game and the story of the game as well. So really, really no comparison there for me. I really enjoyed the game. I'm 3 days in. I started this game on the 29th of December. I think I've played, I don't know how many hours I've played, but I've played a lot in those days because it's quite an addictive game. And I'm totally fixated on carrying it on. I mean, even a week or two into Diablo, I know it's not that far yet for Path of Exile, but it was just so repetitive before the new seasons came out that I think I got to like level 90 or something before I even got to level 100, and I didn't get to level 100, I mean, so... There's so much content in the game. There's lots of different aspects of the game. You've got the actual gameplay itself. You've got the quests. You've got the acts. You've got a million different builds. I mean, the skill tree, which I'll touch upon, is just insane as well. And it's such a clever game to get into. You can spend a lot of time debating a lot of things in this game, and you can play it in a million different ways. And I can see why people have played it for such a long time. And then you've got the end game, which I'm only really just starting to scratch the surface. So I can't really give you too much information on that, but there's lots of content when you get to the Atlas maps and the what's the word, battle pass kind of thing of it with Kirak's vaults and all that kind of stuff. There's so many things to do. So you start off the game, you end on a shoreline, face down. You've got your character that you've selected from the menu. There's a number of different options, Duelist, Shadow, there's an Archer class, there's a few other ones on there, Inquisitor, I think, that kind of stuff. So you decide what kind of build that you want. We can touch upon builds a little bit more later on, but kind of decide. I would put some good thought into this before you start, because I didn't, and I just picked a random one that I liked. And, it may not be the strongest one, so I might have made it a little bit hard for myself, but that's okay. It's half the fun of playing these games, right? So you're running across the beach, you pick a little weapon up, and the game kind of shows you how to play the game and teaches you the basic sort of controls, and you can just play around with it for a little bit to, kind of get used to the game. So, as I said, you can pick your class, and then you can decide on what build you want to use within that class. There's multiple builds per class. There's loads of things that you can choose from. There's lots of different variety. In all honesty, when I first started this character, I was not following a build, but I did know that I would be able to change the build very easily at a relatively low level if I wanted to. It's not necessarily that easy right at the start, but as soon as you get to like the level 20, 30 area, and you've done some of the quests, some of the quests give you respec points, so you can change the passive tree if you need to. I'll touch upon the passive tree a bit more later on. So it's not really the end of the world if you just start the game up. And I didn't have my friend with me at this point yet, so I just started the game, just put whatever points I wanted in, and just had a little play around just to see what it was like and whether I liked the game or not. And you can always kind of, like I said, respec, so it's not really a massive deal at the start. However, if you want to take the game really seriously from the beginning, I would recommend, before you even choose your type of champion or class, you need to do some research online. There's lots of good creators out here that have been doing reviews and content for this game for years and years. Zara and Raxandarax, all these guys. So follow some people, Quinn69, check up some builds online. There's loads of others as well. There's lots of people who don't even stream. On the PoE builds forums, there's so much good content from these guys that really know the game a lot better than people like myself. So go online, pick a build that you really want, and that you can follow the champion or class from that right from the start, and you can start your passive tree off with a bang, and with it being really correctly. So if you really want to take the game seriously, then I would recommend doing that. So as you start getting into the game a little bit, it kind of shows you what to do. It instructs you that you can follow quests, so you should follow the quests, and it gives you the NPCs and the villages and the towns that are able to give you those quests. You have main quests, that would be the main storyline. They usually come up in an orange color, as you can see on the screen on the right side. And you'll also have optional quests or side quests that you can do as well. I highly recommend, and I think this is important as well for new players, do everything, just like I did, because the side quests all give you, as I mentioned before, those respec points, but they also give you skill points. Now, you will not be able to fill the skill tree as you will want it, following the correct builds that you can follow online, without every single skill point. So make sure that you take every single quest available that you can, and also make sure that you take all of the side quests. And I would recommend not leaving a particular area until you have done all of those, so that you know that they're done. I believe once you finish the main story of the game, there is a person, I think it's Lani, that you can check whether you've collected all of the skill points throughout the game yet or not. So you should be able to, you don't worry too much about missing one because you can come back and do them again. The quests are pretty fun. I found them. They do vary. There's not any collection fetch quests, which I really like. I mean, there are kind of fetch quests in here. I mean, you go somewhere and you find something for someone and take it back, but it doesn't really come across that way, or it doesn't come across as boring as some other games the way they do it. And there's none of the, classic WoW, go collect 10 of these bones for me and bring them back. I mean, I really hate doing those type of quests and collections. I'd rather even just go somewhere, kill a boss, and bring something back. I mean, to me, that's a bit more fun than collecting 10 things off mobs. I hate that. So there's none of that in the game. The quests usually take you through a couple of different areas as well, which makes it a bit more interesting. And sometimes they're in dungeons, and there's layers to the dungeon. You've got to find your way through them. And there's little puzzles within those dungeons, which I'll touch upon in another bullet point. And also then bosses and things. And the bosses are all completely different and totally unique, and it's a really good questing system. Next part, which is items and skill gems and the passive tree. This section is extremely complicated, and I've changed this multiple times. And for me, this is probably, well, it definitely is the most complex part of the game. So, as you can see in some of the gameplay footage I've put up, the passive skill tree is enormous. Every skill point counts. And like I said, you can start the game by putting them in whatever you want to put in. But when it gets to a little bit of a higher level, or even level 30, 40, I mean, you might start struggling in places if you don't have a real build in place, like something proper in place. So I would recommend that before you get to level 30, if you've just started and you've just played a random sort of build with random skill points like me, respec at about that point. I'd respec at level 30. Make sure that you have a really solid build in place, because it's going to make your life a lot easier after that. And you can kind of just get away with it until then. But after that point, you're really going to start falling behind, especially if you're playing with somebody, as I did, who's a friend who's played Path of Exile for a long time. And he knew exactly what he was doing. He had a build set up ready, and I was just doing no damage. I was dying all the time, and he was totally cleaning out places. So make sure that you have something put together well. You're also going to get items and skill gems. Now, the skill gem system was very hard for me to get my head around. Essentially, you have items. Those items have different types of weapons within them. For example, two-handed ones, or you can dual wield in my class, or I can use two-handed, or you can use a bow, quiver, all that kind of stuff. All of those types of weapons are going to be completely different per build. So if you have a build with swords, you need to use swords. If you have a build with axes, you need to use axes. If you have a build dual wielded, you need to dual wield. If you have a build with a two-hander, you need to do a two-hander. It's that specific that you can't just get away with using swords, but then put points in dual wielding instead of two-handed if you're going to use a two-handed sword. It's not going to work. So you really have to line up and align your items with the build that you're using. If you use a system or a website called Path of Building, which I was recommended to use, that's really, really helpful. And that shows you how to do some of these things as well. And I think I've got a little bit of a link later on where I show you where I completely overhaul all of my stuff because I was falling behind too much. So I'll show you what the Path of Building looks like as well. So the next point we wanted to talk about was currency. Now, currency in this game is a lot different to most other games. There's no gold coin as such, which makes it doesn't make trading difficult as such, because it's very easy to, again, you can use the forums, you can use Path of Building, this program I've talked about, to even find out what items you want, and you can click on there and find a trade page for these items, and you can put filters in and find what items you need. So it's not difficult to trade. You can directly whisper the people that have posted that item on the forums. But it's not as simple as there's gold coins. You need to figure out what currency is worth what, Ultimately, the main ones are your Chaos Orbs, your Divine Orbs, that kind of Val orbs. But there's going to be a lot of different currencies, as you can see on the video. You've got chromatic orbs, you've got transmutation, you've got alchemy. All of these are worth different things. So when you kill mobs and you go out and you're farming and you pick up items, you can sell those to a vendor. Depending on the worth of the item, you'll get the currency in whatever form from the vendor. So then you can stock all of these up and you can trade them with other people to get one sort of currency. You can trade loads of chromatics for a chaos orb and that kind of stuff. And then people generally use the chaos orbs and divine orbs online to buy and sell whatever you need. So it's a little bit complicated because, as you've seen on the videos, there's loads of different versions of it. But what I would suggest for new people is just to store everything in your stash, sell everything that you get that you're not going to use. Make sure that you don't need the item before you sell it. That's really important. But when you do sell it, just keep everything in your stash, keep it all aside. And you can ask friends, you can ask general chat you can ask the world chat in the group what in the game itself, and people will give you help and their opinion on it. The community, I find, in PoE is really, really good and really helpful. And I've actually, I was streaming this game on the very first day, and as soon as one person saw that I was a new player, they instantly joined my stream. And he came and met me, and he was giving me some scrolls and some currency to help, and he's been really helpful, some items and things. So don't be afraid to reach out in a global chat for some help. I'm sure there'll be people that are willing to give you advice and also price check things for you. So throughout the game as well, you have these things called Trials of Ascendancy. In the first act, I think it's the first act, you have 6 of them to do, and you'll find them in random dungeons. So make sure that you just basically clear every single map that you get, because you want to do these. So you get 6 in the first section, 3 in the second section, 3 in the third section. So each section unlocks a different labyrinth, which I'll show you later on as well. But you need to get these done. You want to get these done because they give you good items and buffs that you're going to need moving forward, but we can talk about that. So the Trial of Ascendancy is basically like a mini puzzle game within the level. Again, I found these quite fun. There are some points in, or some functions in Diablo 4 that were kind of similar. Like I don't know, like not quite your Hell Tides, but the Hell Tide and some of the strongholds. I just didn't find, I don't know, I personally didn't find them very fun. I thought they were quite monotonous. But these things are pretty cool. You get to jump around some traps and open some gates and things. Just they're not rocket science. They're pretty straightforward. But you get to the end and you click the plaque and you make a highlight, and there's a portal that takes you back to the beginning. So you want to make sure that you get all these done. When you get to the Sarn encampment, which I think is Act 6 Part 1, I think, there'll be a plaque in the middle of that place, and it will show you your track record or your progress of doing these. And it'll show you whether you've got 6 in the first part, or 3 in the second part, 3 in the third part. Once you have them unlocked for each section, you can go into the respective labyrinth as well. So, and these are really important, like I said. Also worth mentioning, so you can see these little pitfalls in some of the levels at the moment. And you fall into them and everything's kind of black, and you've got to go through and do some challenges and collect some currency and all that kind of stuff. I actually don't know too much about this at the moment, so I don't want to talk too much about it because it's something that I really need to look into over the next few days as I play the game more. But this is related to the current league itself. Now, the current league is called the Affliction League, and within that are these rifts throughout the game, and you can fall into them accidentally, as I did lots of times, or you can purposely go in them. But like I said, I don't know too much about them. I know you have to go in there and you have to go a certain way because there's darkness in certain sections. If you stand in the darkness too much, you get kicked out, and you want to try and stay in there and follow the trail and that kind of stuff. There's good loot in here. There's some vendors in here as well at a higher level. But as I've watched streamers, as in like really sort of good well-known streamers for Path of Exile, every single one of them is doing these. So I need to look into it a bit more. But essentially, the whole point of this being in the video is that Path of Exile, I have found out, has different leagues, which is like the different seasons. I don't know how long the season lasts, essentially, but it's months. I don't know if it's 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, whatever. I think it's like 3 to 6 or something. The last one started, I think, on the 8th of December, so it's been out for a few weeks, so I've seemed to have caught it at a pretty good time. And there are different world effects throughout each different league, and then as a result, probably different items, and I don't know, So there's something different about the world basically every league. Which moves us on to bosses. Now there are mini quest bosses in the game, and there are also main bosses. I think these in this game are excellent, really good. There are really cool mechanics in all of these boss fights. You can't be an idiot or absolutely useless to beat them. You have to actually think about what you're doing, and you have to be able to move around quite well and dodge certain things and actually use your brain to beat bosses, which I think is just great. I think that's how it should be in games. You don't need, like I said before in the start of the video, you don't need to be a professional to play this game. It's not, some of these bosses are not Elden Ring, but you can't be useless. You need to actually think about what you're doing, and you need to plan some sort of strategy. And that's just the bosses throughout the game. That's just throughout the main storyline content. In the end game at the Atlas maps, which I will touch upon again, but I'm no expert in those either yet. There's some seriously tough maps and tough bosses that not only do you need an exceptional build and extremely expensive rare items to be able to survive at those levels, but you have to be good at the game as well to actually dodge all of the things going on. I mean, like I said, I was watching Rack streaming last night, and he was doing really high level Atlas maps, or as they call it, juicing. And he was running around, and he kept saying, keep playing like every single one can one shot you. So you can literally die one shot if you get caught the wrong way on these higher levels, and that's without the boss. That wasn't just bosses, that was just normal levels, normal mobs. So I really like the bosses mechanics in this game, and I think that's probably the main reason that people keep coming back. Once you kill the boss for each particular quest, usually you can go back and cash in your rewards, or you can cash in your quest rewards. Usually the rewards are, like I said before, a skill point or a respec point. Sometimes they're items, sometimes they're skill gems, and I know I haven't mentioned skill gems yet, only the skill tree. But yeah, they're really important in the game. So make sure that, and this is one of the main reasons that I said earlier, make sure that you get all your quests done, because you want to get every single item you can, you want to get every single skill gem that you can, and you want to get every single skill point and respec point possible for your passive tree. So the quests are pretty basic and self-explanatory. There are also rewards for other things, but they're not necessarily quest rewards. You can collect divination cards, which you can trade in at I can't remember the guy. Tasuni, I think is his name. He's in Highgate. Just off the top of my head, like I said, I've only played a few days. You can trade those cards in with him for certain items that you might need, and obviously then they can have really good rolls and be worth a lot of money. So if any of these cards, I would just pick everything up. Just pick every single thing up on the floor. But like I said, there's rewards for everything, not just quests. There's loads of other things you can turn in. Now, this part of the video is probably the most important part, the skill tree. Now, the skill tree in Path of Exile is, quite frankly, insane. It's absolutely insane, but in a good way. Now, it's enormous. You can't really do it yourself. Like I said at the start, you can mess about and play the game for 20 levels or so, but realistically, when you want to start playing the game properly, you need a build. I can't remember how many points on here exactly, but there's like 1,000 points or something on the skill tree. It's something insane. There's a lot of points on the skill tree, and to even get to the end of some of them, you need to go a really specific path. So you have to follow something that's going to work. Even if you miss out a little cluster of one of them, that might have a massive effect. Just for an example, this might not make loads of sense to people if you've not played the game before, but I have 4 passive skills on my build that I need up and running all of the time. If I don't, and they take reservation off my mana pot, so they grey out areas of my mana pot. And at one point, it was a 92% reservation. Okay, so I had only 8% of my mana available because these other passive skills were up all the time, taking the rest. If I didn't have a certain cluster that enabled me to leech mana when I hit things, then my mana would instantly go to 0. I wouldn't be able to use any skills, and I'd be screwed. So there's like a whole tree. You have all these mini clusters. All the mini clusters mean different things. You have mastery points within the mini clusters to give you extra attributes as well. It's incredible. I've never seen anything like this in any game. I thought when I played Diablo that the skill tree and then I think, is it Paragon board? I can't remember. The Paragon boards, I think they were called, but all the other, I thought that was crazy. This is different gravy. This is a totally different beast altogether. But it's so good. It is so good. All of the builds that you have will be in Path of Building. You can literally download this. I keep saying this, but I'm not getting paid by these guys. But trust me, use this program called Path of Building. Everybody uses it. You can download the builds from these people that they make straight into this tool. The tool then can show you exactly which points to put in. You can even filter it for like level 50, level 75, level 99. So it shows you which ones to prioritize at which levels, so that you've got your best makeup throughout the game on that skill tree. As I mentioned many times already, you can respec points. You can reset the skill tree essentially. You can either do that through respec points from quest rewards, which is the little book, gives you a skill point and respec points. You get 2 of those per time if you get the respec point. Sometimes you only get the skill point. I think probably, if I could guess, going through the game, I might have got 40 points respec. Something like that. However, other items, or there's one of the currencies called Orbs of Regret, and you can use these, and they give you 1 skill point refund every single time you click on one, or every one that you have. And I was lucky again. You probably saw in my inventory earlier when I talked about currency that my friend gave me, like 160 of them or 200 of them from the start. So it was pretty easy to respec. But if you don't have a friend that plays the game, you want to make sure that you do the skill tree correctly the first time, or at least have somebody with you that will, give you some. Skill gems. So these go hand in hand with your items, and they go hand in hand with the passive tree. So, for example, you've got different colored skill gems. You've got green gems, which are dexterity. You've got blue gems, which are intelligence. You've got red gems, which is strength. And then you've got sockets in your items, which are green and red and blue. And then you've got some sockets which join together and some sockets which don't join together. And putting all of these 3 things together is what I found to be really difficult. And doing this on your own without talking to somebody about it is borderline impossible. It's borderline impossible. So it's really important, I think. Don't be afraid to reach out to people to help you with this if you start a character and you want to follow this build correctly. It does on the Path of Building links. On the web pages, it should show you from this person who created the build what items to use, what links to use in there, what gems to use. It shows you all of that, but actually understanding it is a different gravy again. So you've got these standalone slots which can be used for specific skills that don't need any support. It might be like War Banner or Enduring Cry, Rallying Cry, or something like that, whatever. So you can use like a buff skill which doesn't need any support to it because it's like a buff, and it can just be used on its own on a socket that doesn't need to be connected to another one, which necessarily may be easier to obtain. I don't know. You may have one already. Then you've got gems that are linked to other ones. So, for example, I've got in my item there, which was an axe, 1 red gem slot with 2 green ones. Now, the red slot might be something that I use as like one of my main attacks, and the 2 green ones will be supports. Like maybe one of them gives faster attacks, one of them does like extra crit or something. I can't remember what they are, but they support that other one. And they need to be linked to that gem slot for the build to work correctly. And then you need certain amount of gem slots in each item, because, for example, you can't have 6 slots on a one-handed weapon or a helmet. You can only have 4 up on a helmet, 4 on boots, 4 on gloves, and then you can have up to 6 on like a two-handed weapon or 6 on a big piece of armor. So you need to kind of, you might need to chop and change your items around. The 6 slot ones will be, if they're connected, which they need to be a lot of the time, they may be more expensive for you to buy or rarer. Obviously, they'd be rarer to get. So you will need to do a bit of farming and a bit of trading, maybe. But really, to get something off the board, say level 50, you're following the build, you want to get at least all the gems right at level 50. Then you should be able to buy you some armor pieces and weapons and things that at least have the gem slots on them. They probably won't have the top attributes for what you need for the build, because they will be really expensive to get them really right. But at least you can put all the gems in. So that's the first thing I did. I put all the gem. I got all of the items, kind of what I needed. At least the right types of items, like two-handed axe, then a helmet and boots or whatever. And then I got the right gem slots on them connected correctly. And I just put the gems in and I started leveling the gems up, because the gems will level up as you play and generally get better. And if you don't have the right attributes for the gem, it won't let you level them up. So you just make sure that you don't over level the gems. I think it doesn't let you, but just in case it does, make sure you don't over level your gems for what your ability is. So for example, I'm predominantly Dex and Strength. However, I have 2 blue gems. I have a Hex Touch support and Purity of Elements, which is like a buff for defense for elements, and they're intelligence based. So until I went to certain parts of my passive tree, I didn't have enough intelligence, and I also need some on some of my items to make sure that I can have that amount. So just be careful when you're leveling up that you don't over level things, or you don't have it all wrong, where your gems are not being effective where they should be. But the gems part of this is, it just takes time, I think, to look at them and learn it. And like I said, maybe watch like a specialized video on how gems work and how items work. Don't take my sort of advice for that. As I said, I'm totally brand new to this as well. But that's the general gist of things. There's also little hideouts that you can get throughout the game. You can find them in certain areas that you have to clear them out to be able to unlock them, and then you can choose them for yourself. And you can have a stash in there, and you can have some NPCs in there later in the game. You can have the Atlas map device in there as well, so they're quite handy to use. And it's like your like custom location, I suppose. Something worth mentioning, maybe early game, is that if you start doing your gems, but you want to have some movement speed, which will help you level quicker. In one of the rifts, or in some of the rifts, you can find a Warden of Eaves. And then I think it's the Oath of the Magi that you would select on that one, which basically you talk to them, you click yes, you accept what they want, you go to the Magi section, there's 3, I think. And there's one of them where you can have an extra 25% move speed on your boots if you do not socket any gems in those boots. So for the first like 50 levels, maybe you just want to get some move speed, run around, clear places quicker, farm quicker, not necessarily full build, and you can leave your boots gems empty. So I would recommend doing that as well, and I think I've put that on the screen. But obviously later in the game that you want to put the gems in the boots. Now, as I mentioned earlier with the Ascendancy, or the Trials of Ascendancy, later on in the game you're going to get things called Labyrinths. These Labyrinths are multiple levels. I think there's 4. Right, so the first one is the 6 trials that you need to do. The second one is 3. The third one is a further 3, and I believe the last one, which obviously I haven't done yet. I think I've done the first 3. One's something that's cruel, merciless, and something else. They call different things. The last one, you need something completely different. I actually don't know what you need at this point for it, but there's 4 different labyrinths. They are out of the center plaque, which is called through the Aspirant's Trial. It's called, which is in the Sarn encampment, Act 6 or above. Maybe it's Act 8. I don't know when you can start. I think the first one is around level 50, and then the other 2 will be level 60, 70, something like that. 60 and then 70. But these labyrinths, like I said, are really important to do. You can put points in Ascendancy, and that Ascendancy opens up a separate mini passive circle within your skill tree. You can get a choice of one of 3 circles to choose from. For example, for me, for Duelist, I get Gladiator, Slayer, or Champion. And for this build, I choose Champion, and then I follow the points for that. Each labyrinth, you get 2 points. So you pick one circle. You can only use one circle out of the 3, and then you get to pick points out of them. You get 2 points to use per labyrinth. So currently, out of 8 points, I've used 6. And then obviously, when I complete the last one, I'll have the 8th one. But they give you extra bonuses, and they're really helpful. I needed them specifically for my build as well. So don't forget to do those as well as you get through the game. And of course, there's a spoiler alert here for anybody, but I'll put one of these at the start of the video, and I'll put it in the description. But when you get to the last or end of game, last act, I can't remember what it's called, if it's an act or quest or something, you kill the final boss, as you do in every game. But that's not the end of the game. So that you can then go and you figure out, you go to speak to Commander Kirak, who's through a tunnel at the end of the game in the epilogue, and you can speak to him about the Atlas map. Now, this is predominantly where people play the game, right? So the whole story and all the quests and everything getting up to it. For me, I really enjoyed it. It's loads of fun. Obviously, it's the first time I've ever done it. If you do it over and over and over and over, probably it's quite tedious. I don't know yet. I'm not there yet. But I really enjoyed. But this is the point in the game where you really start to play the game and grind the game a lot. So you have different Atlas maps. You have an Atlas device. As I mentioned, you can put one in your hideout, or you can use the one in the epilogue. You put a map piece. So you should start looting towards your end game map pieces. And you can put the map piece in to the device, and then it loads up the map for you. So you get 6 portals, and I believe you have 6 attempts through those portals to complete the map. I think that's how it works. And you go in, and the mob density is higher, the mob damage is much higher, everything's much more difficult. And you can get different tiers. Now, we have only done up to tier 5 so far, or tier 6, I think. But basically, every time you do a map, you have a chance of a higher tier dropping than the one you do it. So in the tier 1, you complete that, you can get one drop for tier 2. Then tier 3, then tier 4, tier 5. You can also upgrade the maps or change the quality of the maps or the prefixes or suffixes, whichever one they're called, on the maps as well, like higher mob density, but you get higher quality items, or more risk of a rare item, or more chance of a rare item, or whatever. Sometimes the enemies might do more damage and you do less damage, or how it works. So very similar to in Diablo, where you had the different levels of Nightmare Dungeons, where you'd have different afflictions and resistances and all that kind of stuff. But this is better, in my opinion. I enjoy these way more. You have a map, the actual Atlas map. You have 115 of these different maps. And you have to kind of work your way through them one by one, connecting. And then you have bonus maps, and you have little bonus sections to do within those maps as well. And they just, they give better loot and harder bosses, and they're challenging. So I haven't had too much experience with these yet, but I'm making this video today on New Year's Day. I've spent a lot of time making this video, but as soon as this video is over, I am going to go straight online, and I'm going to be playing those Atlas maps all day, baby. And I'm going to be grinding and making sure that I get everything done that I can. The other thing that's worth mentioning as well is that for these maps and moving forward, this is where the game gets a bit juicy. So you really need your build. You 100% need your build. You need your items at this point, or you need good items at this point. You also need your gems to be leveled up under the right slots. And most importantly, I found this out the hard way. More so than damage, you need the correct resistances. Resistances I found in this game are huge. I think they max out to 75% for fire, cold, lightning. I think that's it. And then you have chaos resistance. Now, you start off with really bad chaos resistance. And yesterday when I was playing this, I had really shit resistance to fire and chaos. I was getting smoked in these places, absolutely smoked. Whereas my playing partner was absolutely fine. So I had to go on the trading platform, and I had to move some items around and change some things, and it cost quite a bit, I think. I mean, for me, obviously, for these guys who played a long time, it probably wasn't hardly anything, but I spent a good few Chaos Orbs, maybe 5 to 20 Chaos Orbs, moving some resistance stuff around. Luckily for my build, I'm a duelist. Stuff is cheap because not many people play this build because it's technically like a tier C build. which is fine. I mean, I'll give it a go. If I don't like it next season, I'll change it, right? So, but I'm very lucky that things are even really good items are really cheap for me. So that's a bonus at least. But I had to change some stuff around. That I had to change some resistances to be able to play the game properly at this point. Otherwise, I was just dying all the time. So, which leads me to my conclusion for this video. And as I said at the beginning of the video, I honestly am loving this game. I think it's really, really, really well made. I think there's loads of content. They've obviously listened to the player base. I mean, my friend said that he played it years and years ago, and it finished at like Act 6. Now there's like 10 acts, and they've got all the Atlas maps, and everything's totally different. Even the Atlas maps, the way they play, are completely different as well. There's loads of new content, and they've got new leagues and everything. So I think the devs and the software owners really love the game and respect the game and the community. And I think there's still something like 32 million people playing this game globally. So super popular and super good. Thumbs up for me.